Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We're very fortunate to be joined by the developers from Eric's Curiosa. We have Rafa and Nick join us today to talk a little bit about the developments we've made to Sorcery Contested Realm over the last 4 weeks or so. So thank you very much, both of you, for joining.
Glad to be here.
Thanks.
Wonderful. So I know you've both been extremely busy behind the scenes doing a whole bunch of stuff, and we really want to share that with the community today. Before we get started, what's the standout? What do you think is the thing that we've worked on recently, which you think is going to have the most impact to the game?
I would say the fact that the rules are a lot cleaner and a lot easier to understand, and people seem to just play them correctly way more often than they did before, is just very, very promising and a very great thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And added to that, talking about balance, I feel like people will see some archetypes and some other cards maybe that weren't played as much show up way more.
That's extremely encouraging. Now, it's been about, I think it's 5 weeks since the Kickstarter. And since then, we've had a team of playtesters diligently working through all of the different cards, all of these different updates. And so this really is like the summary of a lot of the work we're doing, not just after the Kickstarter, but leading up to that too. So what we're going to do, let's talk about the important stuff first. We're going to go through some of this. Now, for those who are focused on spoilers, there may be 1 or 2 things you haven't seen before. So just bear that in mind. If you want everything to be a surprise, then maybe don't look at the whole video. We're going to feature maybe some new cards. So first up, the first change, we're moving from the notion of wind to air. Now, a bit of a backstory. We actually shared this in a Kickstarter update. It was very subtle. I changed the name of one of the avatar cards to the Avatar of Air, and only 1 person picked up on it. So guys, talk us through this. Why did we make this change?
Well, air is actually the classical name of this particular element. It seemed like a pretty natural change to make, and it has some really nice side effects. For example, now the single letter abbreviation for all of the elements is different. Previously, wind and water had an overlap. So this is just really nice for talking about cards and elements in an abbreviated fashion. And, honestly speaking, I think the reason we were originally using wind was maybe just because of Captain Planet. You may remember Earth, Fire, Wind, Water, and Heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, we looked it up. Air is actually the classical name of the element, and it just was really great in terms of being able to have a single letter abbreviation. So it seemed just like a pretty natural change to make.
Yep. Pretty minor, but our gain is Captain Planet's loss. I think also air talks at a much larger scale to the archetype in general, which gives us some space to do some maybe things which are not specifically wind related in future as well. So moving forward, it's now air rather than wind. Okay, right. So next up, we're going to cover off what are the mechanics in the game that we saw from playtesting. And this was the notion on drawing from an empty deck and the impact that had on ending the game. Folks, do you want to speak up on this and explain a little bit why we made this change?
Sure. The fact that previously the game would just immediately end when you drew from an empty deck made it a lot harder to comfortably play around with milling as an offensive tool, or to have cards that can use your own deck as a sort of expendable resource. It's a very punitive sort of thing for you to just immediately lose. On the other hand, it definitely is important that you eliminate the possibility of stalemates in the very occasional long and drawn out game. And this seemed to strike a very good balance, where it's still a pretty sizable penalty and makes it so you're almost certainly soon going to lose the game if you don't do something drastic. But it allows us a little more space in the future to play around with milling and as an archetype, both offensively and using your deck as a resource.
Wonderful. I know that the milling archetype is always very popular with certain folks. A lot of other games do focus on it, and I think that this gives us just a little bit more space to design around that. Now, one thing I'm sure folks are aware of is the fact that with Sorcery, we do have more than one resource in terms of both the sites and the spellbook as well. And that's kind of a differentiator to how we can actually work from this. I know that we spoke about this previously in terms of actually the card draw in general. Could you speak a little bit more about how we sort of realize the notion of card draw within Sorcery Contested Realm?
Yeah, something that maybe hasn't fully shown up on the latest version of cards is we're going to make most of the card draw in the game give you the option to pick whether you're drawing a spell or a site, unless there's a really strong, flavorful reason that a particular effect wants to deal with only spells or deal with only sites. Generally, you're just going to be given the option, the same way you are with the draw at the start of your turn. You get to pick the resource that you want to draw.
No, that makes good sense for me. Rafa, do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, so this thing about milling, right, as Simon was saying, it is a strategy that a lot of people love, but we understand that it can be a little frustrating when it just like goes kind of out of nowhere. So that changes to address that. So now there is more counterplay to that strategy, and the option as well. That's yet another way. So like, oh, maybe I'm running out of resources here in my spell book. So maybe I can find a viable answer, a viable resource here in my atlas. So those things, those changes, they go hand in hand, and they also give players more control over their decisions and strategies. So we want to play to that particular aspect that Sorcery has, which is like the two different decks.
Yeah. And I know that there was another change which talks a little bit to this as well. When you start the game, obviously you have the ability to mulligan, and I know that we've made some changes there too to allow people to select a starting hand, which gives them tactical advantage.
Yeah, so we've shifted to basically a Hearthstone style mulligan. You know, we've messed around with a couple different options, and all of us just really love the flexibility of being able to mulligan away specific cards that you don't want and then just replace them with a random draw from your deck. You know, we're always trying to, you know, make our own game and find our own space within this realm. But there definitely are some places where we just looked and said, hey, this Hearthstone mulligan system works really well. Let's try it out. And yeah, it's just a great fit for Sorcery. And so that's what we're going with for now.
Yeah, and it gets rid of like this poor play experience where you draw like your initial hand and it's not great, or think about taking the risk and then you just draw like this terrible second hand after a mulligan, and that's really frustrating. And it's not really a matter of like playing the game right or not. So we really wanted to get rid of that and give players a good conditions to start each game well. And the second thing is that it speeds things up considerably. The previous mulligan rule was a little clunky. It took a while. Like players had to do it like in a specific order, and now it's just so fast, so simple, and I feel like it really adds up to the player experience as a whole.
Yeah, you know, I think this is a great change, but also it's one less excuse I have when playing that, oh, I drew a really bad initial hand. And it really encourages me to play to consistency within my deck as well. You know, this really gets to the point now where when you have the strategy of building your deck as well as actually playing it itself, you're actually figuring out which cards that you would need to maybe kick things off or to establish your board presence, etc. So all of these changes, I think, helps both players build out a far more robust experience when playing the game. Awesome. What do we have next? Terminology. So when we design a game, what's important is that we use terms which are both easy to understand and also thematic as well. And I know that we've made some changes. So we're focused now more on the notion of what they would be within the Sorcery universe rather than mechanically which pile that was. And I think we started off here with Lord of the Void, talking about Banish. Rafa, did you want to expand on this a little?
Yeah, so Sorcery is a very thematic game, as people are aware, and we wanted to expand on that. So one of the cards or one of the terms that was used prior was removed from the game, but that's just like rules, kind of like, oh, what does that mean, right? From a theme perspective, that doesn't make much sense. So we ended up going with banish as the term that now means that something's completely like removed from the game. And thematically, it works perfectly. You can see like Lord of the Void being the perfect example, where it just literally making something disappear out of existence. That's its ability, and it fits the theme really nice. And we'll see that also on some other cards as well.
So with the notion of banish, then why mechanically would that be different from having something in the cemetery? Would there be maybe a way of interacting there, maybe with the cemetery in future?
Yeah, for sure. There definitely are cards even currently in the set that have interaction with the cemetery, and definitely this is a very rich design space that we're going to be mining in the future. You know, at some point we're definitely going to make a cemetery focused set. I'm absolutely sure of it. You know, it's just naturally over the course of these sorts of games, you kind of have to explore, you know, all of the different nooks and crannies that are mechanically available to you. And that's one reason we wanted to make sure that we were referring to these things in a way that was like interesting and engaging and flavorful. But also, you know, we have the flexibility to sometimes we can put things in cemeteries, sometimes we can banish them. You know, if it's like a really dangerous reanimate target, or, you know, sometimes we can shuffle things back into decks. It's just nice to have all of those options.
Yeah,
absolutely. I'm just looking to see what we have next. Let me go back to this slide here. What have we got next? We have Scavenging Fiend. Here we go. This is where we get a little bit into the notion of interacting from the cemetery, as you were just saying, Nick. The fact that it is a resource that you can actually mine and actually pull back into the game as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then finally, we're talking about destroying sites. So previously, and correct me if I'm wrong, what we were doing was saying that once a site was destroyed, it became the void. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of been going back and forth internally on exactly how we want to do this. One of the things that was a little awkward with site destruction previously was, oh, what if your avatar is on that site? Avatars aren't allowed to be in the void. And that would cause people to kind of like interact with that emergency rule that says if your avatar would be in the void, just put it on the nearest site instead. Like that's just kind of a stopgap measure just in case we missed something. But ideally, the avatar should just never, ever be able to find its way in the void. And the way we were kind of implementing site destruction in the last public version of the game just kind of completely butted heads with that idea. And we also thought it was maybe even more interesting if after you destroy a site, it still continues to exist in the realm in some capacity. And so what we're proposing now is that if you destroy a site, it just turns into a rubble. You can think of this as just kind of like a generic neutral site token. It's a non-water site. Nobody controls it. It doesn't provide any sort of threshold or mana or anything like that, but it makes it so that you can continue walking on it. And also any player can then replace that rubble by simply playing another site on top of it as if it were a void. But it avoids some weird rules interactions. It makes the game a little bit cleaner. And even though most of the time, if one of your minions is on a site that gets destroyed, that minion's probably going to end up destroyed as well, just like you can see with Crater Eyes. Not a whole lot of things are going to be surviving that, but it just makes it so that the game functions a little more cleanly. And there's just a few more options for us to play around with now.
I'm going to ask the question because I'm sure other people are. Are we going to see a Rubblemancer in future then, maybe? Someone who can shape the world from the destroyed remains of all of these sites?
Absolutely. We have definitely been talking about cards that have interactions with rubble. I can tell you in the alpha set, there is at least one card that just makes rubbles for some particular reason. I don't want to give too much away. I think it's a pretty exciting card. But yeah, one of the interesting things about rubbles is, okay, if instead of just completely destroying a site, it leaves something behind, that's something that we can mechanically care about. And so we can definitely have minions that, are stronger on rubble or care about rubble, or other cards and spells that interact with rubble. And so it just makes it so we have more options in the future.
Being pretty generous with the spoilers today, aren't we? As we're covering a lot of things here behind the scenes. I have to ask you guys to do this more often. Wonderful. So moving on, we're going to go to our next slide, and we could talk a little bit about auras and relics. And what we can see here is one card that I think a lot of people have been exposed to from playtesting. Rafa, did you want to talk a little bit about the aura changes?
Sure. Yeah. So as people that are aware, people that have been playing the game for a while, most auras they've had this conjuration requirement where you'd have it specified how exactly that aura was supposed to be played. And most often it would say something along the lines of play or conjure at the intersection of 2 or 4 sites, and some other minor requirement. And we discussed as a team, and we really wanted to get rid of that like little paragraph or piece of text, so as to clean up the rules box and the text more. And we just made that now the default way of playing auras. So by default now, auras are played at the intersection. So fundamentally, from a gameplay perspective, it hasn't changed much. But now most auras, they just look cleaner and more iconic if you look at the text box.
Absolutely. I think it's really one of our sort of the largest motivating factor when creating a game like this is that we've been very declarative in terms of the simplicity, both in the card design and obviously things like the word choice and word count as well. So really it's allowing us to double down and really sort of make the game as simple to understand as possible. I think it's a overdue change here, but it's obviously going to make things a lot easier to just play. You have a card, you know where it's going to go. There's no special rules here. And what we've done as a result of this is adjust all the cards with that in mind as well. So now they function in both a balanced and mechanical manner, which makes sense to Sorcery. Awesome. So what else have we got here? We have, no, I've not seen this card before. We're talking a little bit more about relics. And I know that Nick, you spoke to me earlier a little bit about some of the changes to relics, both in how we're interacting with them, but also the definition of relics themselves. I'll tell you what, let's start with Rafa in terms of the interactions, then we'll talk to you, Nick, about some of the different archetypes we're thinking about with relics.
Yeah, so it's been some time now where we've tweaked the way minions and units in general can interact with relics, and we've never been 100% or entirely happy about the solution we've come up with. So we've really talked things through, and we try to come up with something that played very natural and was just like straightforward, and made playing relics fun and easy. So you pick it up for free. You don't need to tap anything. You can drop it for free, and that just simplifies things in a whole another level. And there are just some very minor rules that were added to the rule book, which basically prevents players from doing something that isn't really natural, or just feels like you're trying to break the system in a way, as a way to balance the way that relics should or are supposed to be used in the game.
So an example of that would be, we don't want you to be able to attack with a sword and then that tapped minion hands that sword off to another untapped minion who then attacks with that sword again, just over and over and over again. That is like really exploitative and makes it very dangerous to add things that buff attack power onto carryable relics. But something that we did want to enable was, what if you want to carry a relic across the realm and you have like a chain of minions and you want one guy to step to the next site and hand it off, and then that guy steps to the next site and hand it off. That's something that we've always kind of wanted to do, and also things that some of the playtesters have either just done naturally because they didn't know they couldn't, or expressed the idea that they really wanted to be able to do that. So that caused us to sit down and say, hey, we really need to clean up these rules interactions to make sure that this cool and compelling gameplay is possible, but you can't attack 10 times with the same sword in one turn.
Mm-hmm. As much as that would be fairly cool as an exception, I think that for me, relics for me have always been the part of the game where I was happy playing with the pre-con decks, and then got to relics, and I was thinking, I kind of have to pause a little bit here to understand how these really work and what I'm doing. To clean this up and making this concise and more easily understandable really attacks that point of friction within the game. People can basically read the card, know how they interact very, very easily, and then enjoy these to their full capacity. It allows our sort of our journey from someone trying the game into a beginner to becoming more advanced to be a lot smoother as well. So this is a long overdue change. Again, I think this is great, and I'm delighted to be able to showcase this card today. I'm not sure if many people have seen this one, so this is certainly a unique one that I think a lot of people will want to collect. We do have another example as well, I think, of a specific type of relic. We're getting into the notion now of the types. And Nick, I know that you did some work on this to explore how we express how relics function within the board by different type. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so this is something that we're still kind of experimenting with, because different relics do naturally want to have different limitations, right? Most relics you can carry around and trade amongst yourselves. However, really large monuments, that doesn't really make sense. So we currently have a relic subtype called monument, which you just summon it somewhere and then it can't be moved after that. But then there's also, relic minions, if you will, that we're either going to call automatons or constructs or something like that, where they're relics, but they can also move and attack and be attacked the same way other units can be. And so we're still currently looking in the best way to kind of represent all of this information on the card. Maybe we're going to branch out into more relic subtypes that could potentially be, mechanically interesting in the future. Something that we're kind of leaning towards right now is that if a relic has a sword or a shield or both in the top right, then it's a unit and has the innate abilities that other units like avatars and minions have. So for example, something like the Zephyrine airship just has a shield in the top right, which would represent that, okay, it has the standard unit abilities, but because it has no sword in its icon, it can't attack. It can just, move around. It can be attacked by other units if your opponents want to get rid of it. But its main function is, just to carry other minions around.
Got it. And like with anything with this game, if the community, you at home, have any feedback and you would like to sort of voice your opinion, please do so in the comments or join our Discord. This is a very interactive process for us. We've worked alongside both our closed beta playtesters and the community as a whole to really understand how people are interacting with the game. So if you have an idea as to how you'd like this expressed, please let us know. I think we have one final card here which talks a little bit more about, here we go, using a vehicle and the movement interaction as well.
Right, so this is just an example like I was just talking about, where you can see in the top right there's a number and a shield. This would represent that this is a unit, so it has the standard innate unit abilities of being able to move around. But you can see that there's no sword in that particular icon, and so it can't attack. Its attack power can't be buffed up or anything like that. Its function is more or less just to function as a vehicle. Maybe ultimately we will call things like these vehicles. We haven't completely nailed down how far down the relic subtype rabbit hole we want to go. I think the main guiding principle is we just want it to be straightforward and for people to be able to quickly understand the card and play it correctly without a high probability of confusion.
Exactly. And it's fair to say that we've got a little more time to iterate on the design itself. This was a very fully fledged sort of review of all of the cards from the feedback we've had as we ramped up our community. So this is the summation of quite a lot of hard work that we've done. But we reserve the right again to continually try and improve the game with the limited time we have left prior to obviously printing and fulfillment to our customers. So watch this space, and we certainly will be sharing more as we have more to share. Okay. So we're going to get into some of the mechanical stuff now, and I've basically put this together, which talks about blocking, moving, and attacking. And these three notions are very interlinked with this update. And I know that there has been some refinement, mostly in the rulebook rather than the cards themselves. Rafa, do you want to kick this one off, and then Nick, you come in and add a little bit more context?
Absolutely, yeah. So I can say it, like I've play tested enough the old ruling and the new one, and it's important to say that the gameplay still feels the same. It's clearly the same game. It plays out like the pace, the rhythm. It's pretty much the same. But we really wanted to address those like minor details, those maybe niche cases where it just felt a little awkward, or it just played. Maybe we're having to explain things more than we should. So that's what we did here. So regarding blocking, for example, originally you could only block attacks against units or adjacent units, but you could not block attacks against undefended sites. And this was a common mistake that beginners committed. And we just, after talking a lot about possible changes and how to address those things, we just came to the conclusion that, hey, that's not fundamentally breaking the game in any way. It's not making the game terribly slower or just worse in any way. So let's go with what feels more natural and easy to absorb and play out correctly. So lots of those changes, they really kept this principle in mind as we went over them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think from what I saw from the feedback, a lot of the changes were really the behavior that people were doing anyway when they hadn't consulted the rules. And so by basically standardizing on those types of things and then taking a look at the card pool to make relevant adjustments allowed the game to flow a lot more easily.
Yeah, it was really, points where people were getting confused because they thought they should be able to do one particular action because they could do something very analogous in a different situation. And it was just kind of awkward that we had like weird corner cases in the rules saying, oh, you can target this with an attack, at this time, but not at this other time, and all of these sorts of things. And so we really decided to just kind of clean it up and simplify that system and make it so that, now if you have a minion and it has the range of motion to move to any particular location, you can just attempt to do that. You can just attempt to attack anything within your range of motion. And you can attempt to move anywhere in your range of motion. And, it makes it so that there's not these weird feel bad moments where, someone who's much more experienced with the game says, oh, well, actually, in this context, you're not allowed to attack the site. You have to attack this untapped minion first. It was just very unnatural and led to lots of situations where people got confused. And the gameplay is actually, virtually identical. It's just that now you're allowed to attempt to attack whatever you want. Now the defender who has that untapped unit just has the ability to block with that unit. And if you're attacking the site where that untapped unit is already located, then because that unit doesn't need to move to block, they also don't need to tap to block. And so that was another change we made, that the gameplay is now very similar, where instead of having to, clear the way and get rid of these untapped minions, it's just that the defender has the ability to continually block with that untapped minion as long as they don't need to move to do so. And so this just had a really great simplifying effect and made it so there's no confusion whatsoever as to what you're allowed to do, because it's basically, oh, if you believe your minion can get to this location, then just try moving there and see what happens. Maybe someone will block you, maybe they won't.
And it kept a really nice balance regarding attackers and defenders, because now an untapped unit is a very good defender, right? It's able to fully protect that site or unit that is being attacked, but also from an attacker's perspective, you now get to choose any target you want, right? So if your opponent didn't prepare enough, like to protect against their sides against your attacks, you might be able to find some good hits there. So those changes, it not only made things more consistent and simpler, but it also it was done in a way that it kept those two play styles, right? A more aggressive one and more defensive one balanced, which is something that is very important to us.
Yeah,
Yep.
defenders got an extra tool, but attackers also got an extra tool. So overall, the balance is very similar.
Wonderful. I'm a big fan of this. For me, when you consider a game, you have the mechanics which you interact with. By us addressing this in a specific way, it adds a level of simplification, but also that gives you more options, and that space that we can design in with as well. So this basically has sort of reset our benchmark for how then we can actually interact at the combat phase as well. And Nick, I know that there was another mechanic which was to do with how minions reacted to being killed, I think, as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we would really like to play around at some point in the future with a more robust healing archetype with minions. And, previously there really wasn't much of a way that you could do much that was interesting with healing minions because minions who haven't accumulated a lethal amount of damage, they just automatically heal at the end of your turn. And that's just a complete necessity, in my opinion, in a tabletop board game type situation. You just don't want to have counters all over the place, keeping track of damage. But that also means that, because minions have this healing capability just built in, it's kind of hard to play around in that healing space. On the other hand, healing archetypes in Hearthstone, for example, and other digital games where keeping track of numbers is not a problem because the engine just does it automatically, it's really, really fun. And so we wanted to see what we could do to try to mess around in that space, but in a way that, wouldn't flood the board with tokens or dice or whatever. And so we decided, we already have this concept of an avatar being on death's door. And so we decided to experiment with minions doing something very similar. So if a minion takes a lethal accumulation of damage, then they become mortally wounded. And in terms of the gameplay, 98% of the time, nothing is actually going to change. You're just going to pick up your minion, place it in the cemetery, start processing some death rites. But the change here is that for just a moment after one or more of your minions becomes mortally wounded, you immediately have this one opportunity to play a sight or cast a spell that's going to heal them back from the brink. So you could play something like Holy Ground or cast Divine Healing or something like that. And you just have that one opportunity to try to heal a minion that you place a high amount of value on to attempt to bring them back from the brink, like after a combat or maybe after you drop a meteor on everybody's head, something like that. And it just gives us a whole lot more flexibility in the future to kind of play around with a healing archetype in an interesting way that, doesn't have tons of dice encounters, but also, is meaningful in that space where minions just automatically heal at the end of your turn anyways.
Love it. This for me is super cool because it's if you're going, there's not something you can splash into a deck very easily. So you can't put like a couple of healing cards in there and hope you pull them out. You need to kind of commit to this a little bit more. But you're absolutely right. When you look at digital games and the comparison to physical games, it really seems like there's an area here which is ripe for exploration. I'm delighted that we've actually taken the initiative here to see what we can do with Sorcery. So no, this is absolutely fantastic. I'm sure people will be delighted with these updates. Okay, getting towards the end now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why. Why do we update? Why do we do this? Why bother? We've already been to Kickstarter. Everyone loves the game. We've been pretty successful. So I think it's always a case of when designing a game like this is very much a passion project. We all really care about what this game feels like, looks like, how people experience it, how they talk about it to their friends, how they share it and enjoy it. Those things are extremely important to us. And so taking this time to challenge our own wisdom is something which I think any game developer, given the time available, should always attempt to do. This has been a pretty expansive sort of, I would call it a revision of what we had previously. But this wasn't something which was done in isolation after the Kickstarter. These are very much ongoing discussions that we had. In terms of the scale of the update, could you folks talk a little bit about sort of how we approach this and fundamentally what the main areas of an update would be for something like Sorcery?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I want to keep kind of like tinkering with the card file right up until we send it off to the printers, just to make sure that I've done absolutely everything I can do to, make the design of the game as good as I can make it. And so if I know we have a little bit of time while all of the foil masks are being made and whatnot, that's time that I just absolutely must use to continue like iterating on the design, getting feedback from the community, trying to clean up points of confusion in the rules and things like that. It's just something I definitely think we should be doing, and we are doing, almost obsessively. That being said, like, we're not trying to change the core gameplay experience, but it's kind of interesting when the rules aren't entirely consistent. Everybody actually has a different core gameplay experience, because some people think some things work one way, and then other people think that a different mechanic works in a different way. And we really need to find like a clean and intuitive way to bring those two different people together, so that everybody is playing the same game and not constantly having to flip through the rule book and things like that. That's my main goal with the time we have left before we send the file off to the printers.
Yeah, like we love this project, right? And we're players. We're players too, and it's all about the experience, right? It's all, and I know that different people approach the game differently, right? Some people are really into the art more. Other people might care more about the gameplay, and they just want to like play as many games as they can. Um, but 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 in general, we just want this game to be the best it can possibly be, right? And we've been working super hard to go over every single card in the card pool, and really like, and we've been listening a lot to feedback, right? So every time that we see a lot of people like talking about how, oh, I just loved playing card A or B, or oh, we played this match and we had a blast. Or even the negative one, like, oh, we've been struggling about how movement is supposed to work in the game, or oh, why can't we do this, but then we can't do that? Can range to so, and all those things, right? We've been watching closely, and we've been talking a lot internally, and addressing each single one of those issues and scenarios, right? So this is what this is all about, right? It's, as Nick said, it's not about changing the game, but it's like, hey, is there any area, right? Is there any card? Is there anything here that could be even better than it is already? And that's what this has been for me, right? And that will, of course, touch in the rule book itself, but also affect some of the cards that we've been playing for those past months or so.
Yep. I think you mentioned the notion of like different types of players or persona who interact with Sorcery. And I think my aim is for people who maybe have come at this from a collection perspective to realize they've got an absolutely magnificent game they can enjoy. The people who are the players have something which is tuned to a level that it's very satisfying to play, but also they experience all of this artwork. I want to start merging the boundaries a little bit between how people interact with this product. And everything that we've done, I really sets us on a path to be kind of like distinguish ourselves from a lot of the other games out there today. I'm really hoping that people are seeing that we put a tremendous amount of care and attention, not just to the way that we use the art, but also fundamentally how we approach game design and mechanics. We're very experienced people, and obviously a fantastic team of playtesters as well. So for me, I frankly hadn't been keeping pace with some of the developments on the game development side, but learning more about this and preparing for this session, I was absolutely delighted with what I saw. So just to wrap up now, people are probably thinking to themselves, well, how can I experience this? This is great. You've done all this hard work. And the answer is we have a Tabletop Simulator update, which is ready to go. We're recording this at the weekend, and our hope is to drop this very early the following week. And what we'll have is we'll have Tabletop Simulator, which is available to be used by our backers right now. So go ahead, you can download the update and you can experience all of these changes. Because cards have not been changed doesn't mean to say they haven't been considered and reviewed by any means. We've basically gone through the whole card pool. Now, when we talk about Tabletop Simulator, we've got a screen grab here of what Tabletop Simulator looks like now. Rafa, I understand there's been some community contributions to our Tabletop Simulator, and I think people have done a lot of hard work to improve that experience of folks. Is that correct?
Yep. Yeah. So shout out to Joe, or known as Tapeworm in our community. But Joe's been incredibly helpful, and he set up a lot of new functionalities and features in the mod. I think people will have a blast. So now you can pick which mode you want to play.
Oh, looks like we lost Rafa.
I think we have a
player with 4 players.
Oh, he's back.
I think you got disconnected.
You had a slight connection issue. Did you just want to recap on that real quick, about 10 seconds back?
Yep. So now we have new features and functionalities in the mod that people will be able to experience and use. So now you get to choose between the different game modes that we have, as well as a deck importer. So shout out also to the people running those websites, with the deck builders. That's been fantastic job that some of those people have been doing. And and we just want to make the experience even better with this new mod. So we appreciate the hard work that Joe and the community in general has been offering.
Wonderful. My interaction with the community has been absolutely incredible to date. We've had so many people want to contribute and offer feedback. It's all very, very valuable to us. The more we hear from you folks, the better, to be frank. So in addition to Tabletop Simulator, the rulebook has also been updated as well. So when you approach it, it probably would be worthwhile taking a quick look at the rulebook to establish some of the rules changes, and then get connected to Discord and start playing with other people. We also have the print and play decks. To my knowledge, they will be updated. These will be the pre-con decks. So we'll do a small update. That will probably follow a little later than Tabletop Simulator. I don't have a date for that yet. But finally, if you want to be involved, if you're a backer, or maybe you're new to the project and you want to play test, it's very, very easy. All you need to do is have Tabletop Simulator, the commercial product. You can buy it on Steam, and then go ahead, download the update, which is free of charge, and you can play with a whole variety of different people. You can even play with us. I may be willing to lose to a few people as well. So if you want a game, please hit me up. I think, looking at this, I think maybe we could do something, maybe a little bit of a tournament around this in the future as well, given that we've reached this logical break point in terms of design, and we've got a little way to go yet. It may be worthwhile solidifying this and getting a few people to compete. So watch this space. Let's see what we can do to have a little bit of a fun tournament, and people can contribute and play. It's a great opportunity for us to collect some more information. Wonderful. So final thoughts. Rafa, what do you have?
I'm super excited about the change. Can't wait to play with the community. As Simon was saying, it's been amazing. It's just been amazing, like the level of support and engagement. And we've been working super hard behind the scenes, so maybe I haven't been as active as I like to. But yeah, just super excited about the change from as a player myself. And we really hope that everybody will enjoy and appreciate the hard work.
Wonderful.
So thank you, everybody. Yeah.
Nick, what are your final thoughts?
Just want to echo Rafa's sentiments. Definitely all of your feedback is valuable, and we're paying attention to it. And I still think we have a little bit of ways to go, a little bit of polish that we can still put on the design file. So please, keep it coming, keep playing. Let us know the things that you love. Let us know the things that you don't love. Especially let us know the things that you find really confusing and that you and your friend can't agree what you're actually supposed to do. because that's something that, you know, we're definitely really interested in cleaning up. But yeah, other than that, I mean, I'm having a great time, keeping super busy, trying to work on the design and the rules, and yeah, hope to see you guys again sometime soon.
Perfect. Well, sincere thank you to both of you guys working on this behind the scenes. I know that you're absolutely tireless in terms of working on this and keeping things updated. Both thank you for myself and the community for continuing to evolve the game. I'm very excited about what we've seen today, and we hope maybe to do another developer update moving into next month. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attendance today. Any questions, any comments, please put them in the comments below, or visit us on Discord. Be happy to hear more from you. So wrap things up now, and welcome to the contested round.